name is Inspector Malik Adeyemi. For 12 years I wore the badge with pride. I wasn't just a police officer, I was a protector. A black man in a system that rarely welcomed people like me. But I earned my place through discipline, loyalty, and sacrifice. I believed in justice. Until justice betrayed me. It happened on a cold night in London. The city was shaking after the murder of a powerful businessman's son, Damien Kingsley. The heir of billionaire politician Richard Kingsley. The media exploded. The government demanded answers. The police force needed someone to blame. And somehow, that someone became me. I was leading the investigation myself when the order came. Inspector Adeyemi, you are under arrest. At first I laughed. Then the handcuffs snapped around my wrists. They searched my apartment. And there it was, hidden inside my own drawer, a gun. The murder weapon. My heart stopped. That's not mine. I shouted. Someone planted that. But nobody listened. In the interrogation room, I was no longer Malik the officer. I was Malik the suspect. The courtroom was worse. Witnesses I'd never met claimed they saw me at the scene. Evidence appeared like magic, perfectly arranged. And sitting in the front row, Richard Kingsley, smiling. He looked at me like I was already buried. I realized then this wasn't an accident. This was a setup. I had once stopped a shipment connected to Kingsley's underground empire. I thought I was doing my job, but I had stepped into the wrong shadows. The judge finally spoke. Inspector Malik Adeyemi, you are sentenced to life in prison. The words echoed like thunder. My mother cried behind me. My wife collapsed. My children screamed. And I stood frozen. A man who served the law, now condemned by it. As I was dragged away, Kingsley leaned forward and whispered with his eyes, "You thought you could touch me? Now rot." That night in the darkness of my cell, I stared at the ceiling and made a promise. One day, I would walk out. And when I did, I wouldn't be the same man. I would return, and the people who destroyed my life would pay. Prison doesn't take your freedom first. It takes your identity. Inside those walls, I wasn't Inspector Adeyemi anymore. I was inmate number 2149. The guards looked at me with suspicion. The prisoners looked at me with hatred. A cop? They'd spit. You deserve worse. Every day was survival. The first year nearly killed me, not physically but mentally. I kept asking myself, how does a man go from law enforcer to criminal overnight? But the truth was simple. In this world, power writes reality. I learned quickly to stay silent, to watch, to listen, and then I met someone who changed everything. His name was Moses Okoro, an old Nigerian man serving a long sentence, but his eyes were sharp, full of wisdom. One night he sat beside me and asked, "Son, you don't belong here, do you?" I looked away. He nodded slowly. "They framed you." I didn't speak, but my clenched fists answered for me. Moses leaned closer. "This prison will either bury you or forge you." I laughed bitterly. "What choice do I have?" He replied, "Patience, discipline, mind over rage." From that day, Moses became my mentor. He taught me how criminals think, how systems work, how the rich control everything without ever touching blood themselves. He told me the name I already knew, Richard Kingsley. That man owns judges, police captains, journalists, even prisons, Moses warned. I trained my body every morning. I trained my mind every night. I read law books, psychology, strategy. Years passed. By 7, 10, while the world forgot Malik Adeyemi, I was becoming something else. Not a victim, not a prisoner. A storm waiting for release. Then after 13 years, the gates finally opened. I stepped outside feeling sunlight like fire on my skin. The air smelled different. Freedom didn't feel like peace. It felt like unfinished business. Moses' final words echoed in my head. Revenge without truth is poison. Build your justice carefully. I looked up at the sky. Richard Kingsley had stolen my life. But now, I was back. And London wasn't ready for what was coming. The streets felt unfamiliar. London had moved on. New buildings. New faces. New noise. But me? I was stuck 13 years in the past. My children were grown. My wife had remarried. My name was still buried under one label. Murderer. People didn't see Malik the officer. They saw Malik the monster. So I disappeared. I grew a beard. Changed my style. Became a ghost in my own city. But Kingsley, Kingsley was everywhere. His face on billboards, his voice on television. Now a respected politician, a hero. The man who destroyed me was celebrated, and that made the fire in my chest burn hotter. I began to investigate quietly. I followed his men. I listened to whispers in back alleys. I visited old contacts, most were too scared to speak. Until one night, I found someone who couldn't run anymore. A former Kingsley driver named Daniel Marquez. He was shaking when I cornered him. "You worked for him," I said. "Tell me the truth." He cried. "I didn't want to, but I saw everything." My heart pounded. "What did you see?" Daniel swallowed hard. "The murder. Damian Kingsley." I froze. "Yes?" He whispered. "It wasn't you. It wasn't even an enemy." My blood ran cold. It was Richard. I stepped back. "What?" Daniel's voice broke. "He ordered it. His own son. He sacrificed him. For sympathy, for power. And you were the perfect scapegoat." The world spun. A father killed his own child. To rise? That wasn't a man. That was a demon. Daniel handed me something, a flash drive. "Proof," he said. "Recordings, orders, everything." I stared at it like it was the key to hell. My hands trembled. All those years. My suffering. My family destroyed because of one man's ambition. That night I sat alone in the dark, and I made my final vow. This wasn't just revenge anymore. This was justice the courts refused to deliver. Richard Kingsley would fall, not by my anger, but by his own truth. I didn't want to kill him. Death would be too easy. Richard Kingsley deserved something worse. He deserved exposure. He deserved to watch everything he built collapse, so I planned carefully. Piece by piece, I gathered evidence. The recordings, the financial crimes, the bribes, the network. Kingsley wasn't just corrupt. He was untouchable. But even giants have weak foundations. I reached out to one journalist bold enough to risk it all. Amara Mensah, a black investigative reporter known for challenging powerful men. She listened to my story in silence. Then she said, "If this is real, the city will burn." I looked her in the eyes. It should. The day came. Kingsley held a massive public speech in Westminster. Cameras everywhere. Crowds cheering. He stood like a king, smiling, lying. Amara was ready. I stood in the shadows. As Kingsley raised his hands, the screens behind him suddenly changed. A video played. His voice filled the square. "Kill the boy. Frame the officer. Malik Adeyemi will take the fall." Gasps exploded across the crowd. Kingsley's face drained of color. He screamed, "Turn it off." But it was too late. Another clip. Payments, threats, confessions. The truth he buried, now screamed in public. People shouted. Police moved in. Kingsley backed away, trembling. And then, he saw me. I stepped forward, calm as death. He whispered, "You..." I leaned close. "Hello, Richard." His lips shook. "You were supposed to rot." I smiled. "I did rot. For 13 years, he begged quietly. "Please," I whispered back. "You took my life, my family, my name." His eyes filled with terror. I straightened. "But I didn't come back to kill you." I nodded toward the officers arresting him. "I came back to make you live with what you've done." As they placed handcuffs on him, the crowd roared. And for the first time, the system listened. Kingsley was dragged away like I once was. And I walked into the night. Not as a prisoner, not as a victim, but as a man who returned from hell to reclaim justice. My name is Malik Adeyemi, and my story is far from over.